Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Simon.
How are you today?
I'm feeling rather good, actually. How are you?
I'm feeling okay, thank you.
Jolly good.
And hello to everyone who is listening.
Hello.
So what are the listeners currently listening to, Bruce? Who are we? What is this? What's it all about, Alfie?
So they're actually listening to a podcast.
Are they?
It's called Factoraly.
I've heard of that. So Bruce and I are two voiceover artists, and when we're not using our voices for work, we use them for doing this. We're nerds. We love random facts.
Yes,
we love interesting trivia.
Yep.
And each week we pick a subject. Bruce goes away and researches. I go away and research. We come back together and we merge and we see what we found.
Bizarrely, we hardly ever research the same things.
No, we don't. No, we often go off on completely separate tangents.
I don't know why that is.
We're just in tune. Well, I instinctively know what you're going to do, and therefore I don't do it.
Yes. Well, when it comes to horns, I suppose generally we take a dull subject and make it interesting. Horns are actually reasonably interesting.
Yes, they are. Because the word has several different meanings, I kind of feel like I've researched about 5 episodes in one here.
Yes.
So there's an awful lot of material to draw from, so we've sort of had to narrow it down a little on this one.
That's true. Except when they're antlers.
When it's a horn, not a horn.
When it's an antler.
Right. Can you tell us the difference, Bruce?
I can, actually.
Jolly good.
So horns are like a single protrusion, or sometimes two, that grow on the heads of animals, such as bison and sheep and goats. And they're made of bone core.
Right.
Which is covered by keratin, which is the same material as your hair and nails are made of.
Right, okay, yes.
And horns grow continuously throughout an animal's life. Antlers fall off.
Yes.
I mean, they're made mostly of keratin.
Yeah.
Not so much, but not so bony, if you like,
yes.
as a horn.
Sure.
And antlers generally are sort of seasonal.
Okay. Please see our previous episode on reindeer.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so horns just keep on growing and growing and growing. And
they're not like tusks either. So there's a difference between tusks, antlers, horns. So tusks are teeth.
Yes, that's right, yes.
And they're made of ivory.
Yes, that's right. Horns, I believe you can tell the age of a horn by counting its rings, much like you can with a tree.
Wow.
Because they sort of grow layer after layer with each season. So yes,
each year.
Well, they sort of grow throughout the year. The warmer seasons they grow faster. The colder seasons they grow slower, and you can sort of count the rings if you were to cut one in half.
Okay.
So yes, an animal with a horn, rhino, antelope, sheep, goat. The older they are, generally the bigger the horn will be because it's had more time to grow. Whereas animals with antlers, they shed them, and therefore that doesn't quite follow.
So they're naturally occurring horns.
Yes, they are. And they serve a purpose. They are used for display purposes. They're used to attract a mate. They're used for fighting and defending against other animals with similar protrusions.
Yes.
So they're purposeful things. They're quite old as well. I found that the first group of animals to develop horns was a group of animals called the Brontotheridae from around 40 million years ago. And they're loosely rhino-related. They included some creatures called the Megacerops, the Rhino Titan, and the Eotitanops. Go and have a look at any of these creatures. They look like a distant relative of the rhino, and they were sort of the first animals that had what could really be called horns. So they've been around for a while.
Yes.
The word horn is first written down, spelt in its current format, in 1150. It came from an Old English word horn, which came from a German word horn, which came from the Dutch word horn, which came from the Proto-Indo-European word, which I love saying as a sentence, chrono.
Oh.
Which originally meant the top of your head.
So is that where you get core? So like the French word for horn?
That would make sense.
Okay.
It's also probably where we get crown, so the crown of your head.
Oh, okay.
So that's the origin of the word. It has pretty much always meant what it is.
Right.
So that's horns in their natural form. Then at some point or other, during prehistoric times apparently, a human being came along, lopped a horn off an animal, cut a hole in one end of it and blew through it, and it made a nice sound.
Yes.
Apparently there are prehistoric wall paintings showing people blowing horns. So we've been doing that. We've had that sort of audio musical sense of the word horn for a bloomin' long time.
Yes. You can also use them for drinking.
Oh, of course, drinking horns. Didn't think of that.
Yeah. So the Vikings used to use, well, in fact, we should go back. So, it's normally the Romans or the Egyptians. This time it's the Greeks.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that'll make a nice change.
I know. Dionysus held drinking horns in high esteem, apparently.
Really?
Drinking horns are used quite a lot you can see them in carvings in Greece, people drinking out of a horn. But yeah, you generally think of like the wild Viking hordes drinking their ale out of a horn.
Yes, you do, don't you? Yes, any kind of medieval era, knights or, I don't know, Lord of the Rings or anything like that, there's always a drinking horn involved.
Yes. Although could go back to the Egyptians?
Please.
Amon-Ra. Was an Egyptian god of protection.
Right.
And often depicted with ram's horns.
Okay.
And the Greeks took Amon-Ra and made him into Zeus, and then incorporated him as Jupiter. Right, so Ammon, the Egyptian god with the horns. You've probably seen, like, there's often a circle. Like when you see the Egyptian god Ammon, he's got like a pair of horns with a circle between the two horns.
Oh, I see.
It looks like the world, or it could be like a ball.
Yes, I can picture that. Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
Did you come across a thing called a carnix?
Nope.
Yeah.
See, this is where we work so well. We find out different things from each other.
So the carnix was a wind instrument used by the Celts during the Iron Age.
Okay.
And it was sort of a trumpet made of bronze, and it stood straight up. So,
oh yes, I've seen a picture of that. I didn't realise that's what it was called. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, so the sound sort of goes over the top of the troops.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And they usually had a sort of the shape of a head or an open-mouthed boar or something.
Yes, I can picture a drawing in the Asterix comic books of various Roman centurions using a horn like that. It sort of has the carved shape of a lion's mouth or something on the end of it.
Yes.
It's either that or it's the big curly things that sort of wrap around you looking like a tuba or something, But originally, the blowing of horns was, I can't imagine the first person who accidentally, I don't know, maybe they were taking a drink from their drinking horn and they used it wrong. I don't know. But they make a jolly good, resonant, far-carrying sound.
Well, they are mentioned in the Bible.
Yes, of course they are. So I was going to mention that. So they're used for warning or signalling. So look out, a bad guy's coming, or it's time to go hunting, or whatever it might be.
Or when you're fitting the Battle of Jericho.
Yes, of course. Yes, he did fit that battle, didn't he?
He did fit that battle.
And I believe blowing horns are still used in Jewish religious ceremonies.
They are, the shofar.
The shofar, that's right.
Yes, it's a ram's horn.
And then sort of all the way up to, you picture those really long, thin, straight bugle-type horns with a banner hanging from the end.
Yes.
That's sort of used in royal court to announce the entry of the king or queen.
Or used at Christmas at the Royal Albert Hall when they have the Christmas songs, which I sing at.
Yes, of course. And another area I hadn't really considered, but this suddenly came up, was alpine horns, or alp horns.
I love an alp horn.
Those massive, big wooden, apparently they're made from two individual curved pieces of wood, which are then sort of trussed together. And, they're sort of about 10 feet long, and they rest on the floor, and they just produce this wonderful bellowing sound that goes across the valleys and the mountains. And apparently, I'd never really realised what they were for, but they were sort of a communication device to call out to the shepherds in the mountains and say, it's time to bring the cows into the barn for milking.
I'll come on to why they're so big and long later.
Oh, good.
Because there's a reason why that shape.
Hooray. Getting techie. Good.
Talking about using horns for war and sort of bringing down walls with a horn.
Yes.
It's not really that far-fetched. As recently as the Second World War, horns were used to detect aircraft coming towards Britain.
Really? Talk about that.
There's a large horn called a war tuber.
Is there?
Yeah.
Right.
And so what they would do is they would use it to detect enemy aircraft. This is before radar.
Okay.
So you just basically listen out for the aeroplanes. And they were connected to a stethoscope, like an earphone.
Oh, right.
And the operator would listen for the sound of an aircraft engine. And what they would do is they would position the horn in the direction of the sound,
Yes.
and then write down the direction of the aircraft and pass it on to the searchlights and the gunners.
Right.
So they could keep an eye open in that particular direction to see when they could see the aeroplanes.
So it's sort of like a giant ear trumpet.
Yes, exactly. Exactly like
That's
that.
great. Isn't that interesting? I'd thought about blowing into a horn to make a sound. I'd never even thought about putting your ear to the end of a horn to hear a sound. But yes, that's pretty much the same thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Great.
The use of the horn in war
Yes.
is very well documented. I mean, they were used to signal all sorts of things. You had a bugler, or you had somebody on the horn to tell you what to do.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, you had different musical codes for, time for battle, time for retreat.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what I do. I've actually got a recording of lots of different bugle calls,
Okay.
which I'll put in the show notes at factoraly.com.
Factoraly.com.
Yep. So if you look at the blog, you'll see there are show notes, which, I mean, there are links, but they will send you down
Yes.
enormous great horns of
Be
stuff.
careful. Be careful.
Cornucopia, which is literally a horn of plenty.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
So here we go. I'll give you a very quick rundown of the horn signals.
Goody.
So you've got rallying troops, signalling troop movements, signalling tactical manoeuvres, the start of battles, the end of battles, the start of an offensive. You've got the adjutant's call, alarm, assembly, attention, boots and saddles, call to quarters, reveille. Just loads and loads of different calls that you can get on a bugle, which is effectively a horn.
And then you've got the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy of Company B.
Yes.
Grand.
Who would probably have got cashiered for doing that. Do they still use cashiered? I don't know if they do. They just get sacked from the army now, I suppose.
The only sense in which I know the word cashier used is in cashier number 1, please. I've met the person who does that.
Really?
I've met that voiceover, yeah.
He's one of us.
One of us. One of us. Did you know that a trumpet is not a horn?
Sorry?
A trumpet is not a horn. So we talk about, we sort of hear in the jazz era, you think about Louis Armstrong or whoever it might be playing their trumpet and nicknaming it their horn. Apparently, a horn has to be conical. It has to be narrower at the mouth end and wider at the other end.
Yeah.
A trumpet, although it does have a flared section at one end, the tube itself is not conical, it's cylindrical, and therefore it's not technically a horn.
Well, I'm blowed.
Just like the trumpet.
I mean, I know there are things like, the brass instruments in an orchestra are generally sort of, I mean, but then some of them horns and some of them aren't horns.
Exactly, yeah. So if you look at a French horn, if you look at a hunting horn, is there such a thing as a flugelhorn, or have I just made that up?
No, that's correct.
If you look at any of those things, they fit that description. They are very, very narrow at the mouth end, and they gradually taper out to the large flare at the other end. And the science behind that, the science behind how a horn works is actually quite interesting. You put a very small amount of air in at the narrow end, and an awful lot of air comes out at the flared end, and therefore it amplifies the sound. If you were to just blow down a tube without a flare at the other end, it would be an awful lot quieter. So they're actually quite clever things. And to think that all just came from a person who lopped a horn off a cow and blew it,
Yes.
Do
you know how long a French horn is?
No, I don't.
It's 13 feet long.
Assuming it were unraveled.
Yes, if you are able to unravel it.
13 feet?
13 feet of
Crikey,
horn
that's
in
quite
a
long,
French
isn't it?
horn. It is, yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier on the benefits of a longer horn in blowing.
Yes.
I feel that's a moment to discuss that.
Okay, so it's all about wavelengths and waveforms.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to tell somebody a long way away, like if you're a Viking or if you're in the Swiss Alps,
Yes.
that something is happening,
Yes.
you need quite a low note because the low note has a long wavelength.
Oh, we're getting our audio engineering geek on here.
We are. We have to know about this stuff as voiceovers.
Yes, we do.
So one of the things that a long sound wave is useful for is telling people in ships where there are rocks.
Yes, of course. Foghorns.
Foghorns. So if you look at old foghorns,
Yes.
the old, literally steam-powered foghorns,
Yeah.
they had a very, very, very long horn on the top of a lighthouse or on the top of somewhere where they were near rocks.
Yes.
And the idea of that, the length of that horn, is so that you could produce a note that was incredibly low, because short wavelength, it's like shortwave versus long wave on the radio.
Yeah.
So shortwave doesn't go very far. Long wave goes around the world.
Yes.
So a long sound wave travels a lot further, especially in fog and things like that, where a short sound wave will get lost very quickly.
Yes, okay. That makes
So
sense.
that's why foghorns go moo, as opposed to going
That was beautiful. I enjoyed that.
yeah. So and foghorns were originally, as I said, they were steam powered.
Yeah.
Nowadays they're much more using speakers,
Yes,
sort of
that's
like
right.
a diaphragm.
Yes, that's right.
But they still use that very, very long horn, because that gives them the depth that they
Brilliant.
need to travel far enough to warn ships out at sea.
That's very good.
And also there are various different lengths of, what would you call it, beeping?
Feels inadequate, doesn't it?
I know. Well, the beeps on a foghorn generally are different for each place where there's a lighthouse.
Oh, what,
So
in
you-
order to tell you where you are?
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
So if it's
okay.
like 2 longs and a short or something, you know that you're in one particular area of the sea.
I see, okay. The first time I remember hearing or seeing about a foghorn was as a nipper watching the Disney movie Pete's Dragon,
Okay.
which takes place in a lighthouse, and they use the foghorn to scare off a couple of troublemakers. And it's just such a beautiful, resonant sound. You know, these modern things that go beep, it doesn't quite feel the same for me. But apparently before foghorns, people used to blow whistles, blow on large seashells. If you go back far enough, you know, they would blow on a conch shell or
Yeah.
something like that. Around the 1700s, they started firing cannons or muskets every 5 minutes, just to, you know, so that ships could hear that sound. The first written record of using explosives as a predecessor to the foghorn was in 1719 in Cornwall at Eddystone Lighthouse. But obviously that's not automated. You have to, you know, reload your cannon every
Yeah.
now and then. And so through the 19th century, they sort of tried to work out a different way of doing it. As you say, they had steam-powered foghorns. The gentleman who's credited with inventing the steam-powered foghorn, I found out about this chap called Robert Foley, who was a Scottish fellow who moved to Canada. And apparently he was out taking a walk one day in the fog, and he could hear his daughter playing the piano back in the house.
Uh-huh.
And he noticed that the low notes were clearer than the high notes. And so he's credited with the idea of what you've just said, of using lower notes to alert ships
Right.
rather than higher notes, because they can be heard from further away. And he came up with this idea for a steam-powered foghorn in 1859, I think it was.
Gosh. There are bits of you which are named after a horn.
Are there?
Well, you know, I mentioned Ammon's horn earlier, the Egyptian guy.
Yes.
There's actually a bit in your brain called Ammon's horn, or the hippocampus proper.
Oh, okay.
And it
right.
actually looks like the shape of ram's horns.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So you have a little piece of Egyptian horn in your brain.
Oh, doesn't that make you proud?
Horns can be quite dangerous, though.
I would imagine so, yes. If you have a raging bull charging at you, that's going to hurt.
Or when you're trying to sail from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
Yes, exactly the same thing. What? What?
So, Cape Horn.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, what a segue.
So Cape Horn is a place at the bottom of South America, which is where the Pacific Ocean meets the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes.
And it's very easy to go west to east, but it's practically impossible to go east to west.
Is it?
It's very, very, very difficult.
Huh.
You hear terrible stories of ships meeting their ends on the Cape Horn. I mean, there's the Cape of Good Hope, which is the one at the bottom of Africa.
Sure, yes.
Which is also, that's not as difficult a cape as Cape Horn. I mean,
Right.
You've got Good Hope, which sounds good.
It sounds promising, doesn't it, already? Yeah.
Horn sounds a bit, could be troublesome. There's a wonderful thing called the Wagner tuba. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't, no.
So Richard Wagner, for his ring cycle operas, he actually decided that there wasn't a sound there was a sound in his head that he couldn't make using musical instruments.
Right.
So he designed a brass instrument called the Wagner tuba,
Ooh.
which sounds very similar to a tuba,
Right.
but apparently not similar enough.
Is it sort of a bit lower and deeper, or a bit raspier, or?
I'll have to put a thing in the show notes explaining what the difference is between a Wagner tuba and a tuba.
Yes. Do you know one of my favourite sounds that can be made by a horn?
Go on.
Poop, poop.
Is that Toad of Toad Hall?
It is.
Yay!
Being a massive fan of Wind in the Willows, as I am, I love the idea of a nice old-fashioned car horn that just looks like a little bugle with sort of a leather or rubber squeezy bit at one end,
yes.
bulb, that you either squeeze or punch, and it makes that beautiful poop poop noise that Mr. Toad was so fond of. I think that's a beautiful sound. The person who first thought, let's put a trumpet on the side of the car.
Yes.
It's a great idea.
There are some beautiful looking trumpets on the sides of cars.
Yes.
Again, a bit like the Carnix. I've seen cars, and I will put a picture, because I know I've taken a picture of this, of a car with a car horn that goes all the way along the side of the car and ends up in a sort of like a dragon's head. Have you ever eaten a horn?
Cream horn?
Yes.
Boom, that's where he was going.
Canoncini or cornucopia in Greece.
No, I have not had one of
And
those.
Schaumrollen in Austria.
Oh, no.
Even in America, they have different names. They're called ladylocks or clothespin cookies.
Okay. Sounds
Cream
nice.
horns are yummy. What makes up a cream horn?
A horn and some cream,
But not
I would suggest.
Not a proper horn, though.
No. A horn shape made out of pastry of some kind?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. A little bit croissant-esque, but with a hole at one end filled with cream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cream horns. Of course, one of the most famous horns in the world, I don't know if it still is actually, is the HMV logo.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember HMV? They used to have shops and everything.
They're making a little bit of a research, actually.
Are they?
I've seen a few very, very small HMV shops around.
So when HMV first launched selling records, they used an old sort of wind-up gramophone.
Yes.
And attached to the wind-up gramophone, obviously, is a large horn,
Yes.
which you play the music out of. And there was a dog called Nipper
Yes, there was.
who was listening to the music that was coming out of the horn.
Yes.
And I think that there's a music company that's now making something called Nipper. And I don't know what. I don't know why. I think it's Warner Brothers rather than HMV.
Nipper the dog is buried in Kingston upon Thames, which is
Really?
quite close to me. He's got a little black.
Gosh.
Sadly, he was buried in a park, which has now got a branch of Lloyd's Bank sitting on top of it, so you can't see his burial place, but there's a nearby plaque.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
His master's voice.
indeed.
So, Simon, are there any records about horns?
Yes, there are quite a few, because, as mentioned earlier, because horn has so many different interpretations. There's an
Okay.
awful lot of records that go with each sub-topic.
Okay.
So I've had to narrow it down a little bit. In animal terms, the biggest animal horn came from an Asian water buffalo from Thailand. This particular water buffalo was shot, sadly, in 1955. And his horns, given the fact that it's sort of a pair of horns joined at the forehead, from tip to tip was 13 feet and 10 inches.
I was not expecting that.
No, neither was I when I read it.
That would be very difficult to get through a door with.
Wouldn't it just? So 13 feet, that's a little more than you laying horizontally on one side of his forehead and me laying horizontally on the other side of his forehead, made out of horn. That must have been so unwieldy.
Yeah.
The largest ensemble of car horns.
Oh, yes.
1,077 vehicles got together in August of 2023 in the Philippines. This was organised by the Ford Everest Motor Club in the Philippines. And they played their car horns for 1 minute and 6 seconds. Not just a constant bap, but, bibbing and tooting individually all together. 1,077 of them.
Wow. You can actually play music. You can play Beethoven on car horns.
Yes, I can imagine you would.
There's a thing called the Toyota Choir.
Right.
Who use car horns to play various different tunes.
Wow. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. I mean, you see Bill Bailey doing it from time to time.
Oh, yes, of course. He did, what was it, Enter Sandman.
Quite possibly. We'll put a video on, if it's available. We'll put it on the show notes.
Very good. I found another record for the largest number of alpine horn players. 1,006 of them.
What?
Gathered together in Switzerland.
That's a noise.
Just last year, 2024. And then I discovered something called the Foghorn Requiem, which is a piece of music composed for brass band and ship's foghorn.
Wow. See, every time you say foghorn, I want to say, I say.
I'm no chicken, I'm a rooster. Yes, I understand. In 2013, someone gathered together 55 ships in the North Sea. They had a brass band playing on the shore, and they were accompanied by these 55 ships' horns.
Please tell me that exists in video.
It does exist in video. I will put it up on the website.
Fantastic.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
All of the ships were connected to each other via the internet, and they were actually programmed to signal their horns in complete synchrony.
Oh, my word.
From afar, rather than being reliant on each individual captain pressing the button.
Can you imagine the latency on that? You'd have to allow for quite a lot of pauses.
Yes, it would have to be created in such a way that it all sounded perfectly synchronized from the shore for the people who were standing near the band.
It always amazes me how they manage to do that with fireworks when they've got music and fireworks, how they manage to get the fireworks going bang at exactly the right point.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's quite impressive. And this one isn't really, well, I can't verify that it's an official record, but there's a video floating around on YouTube, again, I'll put it on the show notes, that claims to be the world's largest air horn. It's pretty big. That doesn't actually give the measurements, so that's a little bit of a problem. But there's an American fella who created this incredibly large air horn, drove 2.5 miles away, and got his friend to activate it, and could hear it all that distance away.
So not just for a sporting event or anything like that?
No, it was a sort of a science experiment. They were trying to see, well, firstly, the video shows the fact that this air horn can break glass if played at the right frequency.
Yes.
Secondly, they wanted to see how far away you could hear the air horn. And thirdly, they timed the speed of sound. So from 2.5 miles away, one person hit the trigger for the air horn, the other person waited, and it took 11 seconds for the sound of the air horn to reach their ears.
Wow.
So that's quite fun. Well, that's all the information I have on the broad subject of horns. How about you, Bruce?
No, that's it for me too. I'm all played out.
I'm feeling brassed off.
So thank you ever so much for listening to this episode. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And you'll know when the next time is because you will have subscribed, won't you, Simon?
Absolutely you will. Yes, you shouldn't just rely on guesswork or telepathy. You will have hit the subscribe button and you'll get a lovely little ping in your inbox every week to say that a new episode has arrived.
Same thing if you leave a 5-star review.
Which is, no fewer than it deserves, frankly.
Well, we think so. And if you tell us why you liked this particular episode on horns, we will be terribly, terribly grateful.
We will, because we don't like to blow our own trumpet.
Oh, dear. I mean, as will your friends when you tell them all about this episode.
Yes.
And if you want to pull us up on anything that we do on any of our shows,
Yes.
we've got a Facebook page, Factoraly, or you can just tell us directly. You can just hello@factoraly.com will reach us.
We love being corrected because we're on a constant journey of growth and knowledge and understanding. So if we've got something wrong, let us
You
know.
have to give as good as you get, don't you? Because
Yes.
we'll be at things where we go, actually,
Oh, yes.
I think you'll find you're wrong.
Yes. So we're perfectly happy to be on the receiving end of that as well. So thank you so much for joining us for another fun-filled episode of Factoraly. And please come again soon.
Until then, au revoir.
Bye-bye.